The Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Eels Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast, the Parramatta Times.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another year of the Paracave Podcast. And anyway, this is the interview-based podcast. They are back for 2024, and you will hear interviews with former players of the greatest game of all, rugby league, but also the supporters, the fans and members of rugby league of various clubs, celebrity fans, your everyday fans. As without the fans, you don't have a game, and that game, of course, is rugby league, the greatest game of all. This is the first episode for 2024, the first interview-based podcast, and it's all thanks to the sponsors, Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Eels Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and also the Parramatta Times, the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast. Now, you'll be able to find this podcast on Spotify, Apple, and also YouTube now as well, with videos as well. And so I've branched out, and the audio will be on YouTube as well. So please subscribe to all of those, or whichever one you prefer to listen to the podcast on. Now, look, into today's episode, and look, this was a great chat that I had with a Parramatta Eels fan, massive Parramatta Eels fan, in the Paracave before Christmas, and I felt really privileged for him to come to the Paracave and check it out as well. I love doing the interviews in the Paracave, they're fantastic. But look, this gentleman, Chris Ricketts, he's a massive Parramatta fan, but the other side to him is he is a massive jersey collector. Now, you'll be able to find his jersey collection on Instagram at Ricks_jersey_bonanza_sequel. Now, on that, it's a forum for discussion on the finest garment on earth, the humble jersey. But look, he's got rugby league jerseys, he's got soccer jerseys, cricket jerseys, NFL, I believe, every single Parramatta jersey. I reckon there's some great classics there. I'm just looking through it now on his Instagram channel. State of origin, Australia, city versus country, the old city versus country jerseys, Australia, I just mentioned that. Look, there's some great looking jerseys there. So he is a jersey collector. Some great pictures there, bringing back some great memories. Rugby union as well, the Waratahs represented there. Some English jerseys. Look, this is a great collection, and look, throughout the chat we talk about his support for the Parramatta Eels, but we also talk about his jersey collection as well, and it's really interesting story. Look, he's got thousands of jerseys, so check out that Instagram handle and you'll be able to give him a follow as well. But a great bloke, a really interesting chat. I'm hoping to catch up with him at Magic Round, and also before Magic Round, Chris will actually be going to the Las Vegas doubleheader, which is at the start of March, so the opening round of the NRL. So I'm hoping to catch up with him either just before the NRL doubleheader and maybe after as well, just to get his experiences of that doubleheader in Las Vegas, rugby league in Las Vegas. So, look, he's really looking forward to that, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully chatting to him about that. But look, you don't want to hear me talking. You want to get into the story. You want to get into the conversation. You want to hear his story. So, look, that's enough of me talking. And as Hindy says,
get a beer, coffee, whatever you want.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy. And let's get straight into it.
Well, it's great to be here in the world-famous Parra Cave. I'm here with the one and only Troy Warner. Very excited about the opportunity to talk about a few of our favourite things, namely the Blue and Gold Army, the Parramatta Eels, the pride of the West, our mutual love of jersey collecting, both Parramatta and then some other rare ones that we've got, some of our favourite games throughout the year, some of our favourite moments, and very excited to be here.
And as you heard from his intro, my guest today on the Parra Cave podcast, his name is Chris Ricketts. He is a massive Parramatta Eels fan and also has an amazing Instagram site called Rick's Jersey Bonanza, sequel of his love for jersey collecting, mostly Parramatta, but also other sports, other clubs as well, which is massive. Got some great stuff on there. But we're going to talk about his love for the Parramatta Eels and the game of rugby league with no doubt, some interesting stories as well. Thank you very much for joining me today in the Parra Cave. Welcome to the Parra Cave podcast.
Thanks, Troy. Great to be here.
Not a problem. Let's go back right to the start. How and when did you discover the Parramatta Eels and start to support the Eels?
Yeah, so it was unfortunate timing for me because I was a little bit too young and I missed the golden era. So for me, I started kindergarten in 1988, and at the time my best friend in kindergarten was a Parramatta Eels fan. So he introduced me to the sport, introduced me to the side, and then I fell in love at first sight. So I grew up in Eastwood, which is in the northwest of Sydney, and everyone there was either a Eels fan or a Tigers fan. At the time, it was slightly controversial to become a Parramatta fan because the Tigers were on the up and the Eels were on the down. But ultimately, it's a choice I'm happy with. No one can be happy all their life, and the pain is what sustains us, I think, as Parramatta fans.
Well, that's it. You got to pick and stick, don't you? Some of these people that pick a team and then when they're winning and then when they're losing, they change teams. But nah, you got to pick and stick, no matter how good or how bad they're going. 1988, as you said, Canterbury and Balmain were on the rise, and Parramatta, after the 86 grand final, going through their lean years. Who were some of your favourite players back in the day in when you started first supporting Parramatta?
Yeah, so it was a bit late for sort of the Cronin and Price era, but Kenny and Sterling were still around, so they were obviously my favourites to begin with. And then I had some of those wonderful early 90s years with some of the names that some of us love there. So you get the likes of Krankovic and Mann and Eriksson still floating around. And you've got some really sort of cult hero names at that point. Not guys that won a lot of games at the time, but I think if anyone comes up to you and says I was a fan of Stu Galbraith, they're probably they're probably a real fan, or Tolson Tollett or guys like that. So it was a great era. We didn't win a lot, but I loved watching every single game. We had some hit and miss coaches, Ron Hilditch, Mick Cronin, guys like that who were true heroes of the club. Couldn't bring us success, unfortunately.
Now, you mentioned some guests there, some names there that have been guests on the podcast: Stewie Galbraith, Danny Krankovic, great blokes. They certainly were, as you said, sort of cult heroes back in the day, just the way they played. But yeah, some great names there in those early times. What were some of the favourite games in those early times of supporting the Eels?
Yeah, well, I think for me, my first game I went to, so my parents weren't league fans,
Okay.
So my grandparents were. So they took me to a game in '89. It was my first game. We beat Norths 30-6, and from there I was completely hooked. beyond that, I remember us spoiling the party when we went to when Brisbane went to, was it ANZ Stadium or QE2 Stadium?
Yep.
I forget what it was called at the time. We
Yep.
beat them, I think, 12-8.
Yep.
Which really just flew in the face of the form guide at the time, and that was a magnificent win. We beat the Poms in a midweek
yes.
fixture, and obviously that's best known for Odin Ryan knocking over a fire. So there were some really great moments throughout the 90s, and you remember those games because we weren't winning a lot of games. I think we were running second last. It was a year we should have come last, and the Cowboys might have been docked some points, and we ended up coming, 15th or 19th or however many clubs there were at the time. So there were some pretty dark moments there, and then Super League happened, and we got the Canterbury 4, and things changed for a little bit. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Talking to Martin Afire on the podcast, he always says that everyone remembers for Odin Ryan winning, and for him, they always talk about the losses, they never talk about the wins. So I'm not 100% sure if he's sort of gotten over that, I don't think, back in the day. But no, and those times, certainly a great victory for Parramatta in those days for the fans. In those early days, travelling around, was there a favourite away game or ground that you went to and saw the Eels play?
Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you, it was always a stretch just to get my folks to drive me to the home games, not being old enough to drive at the time. But the grounds that I did enjoy going, so I went away to Cogra, that was fun. Plenty of games away at Leichhardt to mixed success. Although Alan Jones came in, thankfully, and started to destroy that club. So ultimately, we started to win more than we lost there. Some of those great old grounds are still, as someone who grew up in the 80s and 90s supporting the game and now has kept it going, I love North Sydney Oval, love Leichhardt Oval. Going to Belmore, my uncle played a bit of reserve grade for the Dogs. Those old traditional grounds really still resonate with me.
What do you think about those suburban grounds? Do you think the government should spend more money on those and we should have more games there, and like the Tigers, they should play maybe 6 to 7 games at Leichhardt and the rest at Campbelltown and things like that? I mean, they're improving Shark Park at the moment a little bit. Penrith have come up with a plan that they want to improve their ground, which is 30, 40, 50 years old. What are your thoughts on the suburban grounds? Should we be looking after them and playing more rugby league at those grounds?
Well, look, at the risk of getting into a political discussion here and the pros and cons of pork barrelling, I think what I would say is, as a rugby league tragic, I absolutely would love to see these grounds sustained. As to whether that's the best use of funds for the public interest, that's really, up to the public to decide. My view is, I would love to see Leichhardt get a facelift. I look at what's happened with Parramatta Stadium and how that's just reinvented that ground. It was only 86, so it was only 32 years old, 33 years old when they renovated it, knocked it down. But it's just a magnificent footy ground. And I do think suburban footy is the lifeblood of the game. That tribalism is what sets us apart from union and other codes within Australia.
Parramatta Stadium, you went there plenty of times. Compare that to the current CommBank Stadium. It's sort of, Parramatta Stadium at the time was the best stadium in Sydney for rugby league. And what are your thoughts on CommBank Stadium that's there now?
So, when I was going and I was a kid, I loved Parramatta Stadium. Now that I'm in my 40s, watching games at CommBank is probably more suited to the level of comfort that I like to have.
Yeah.
But as a kid roaming around on the hill and just roosting bombs up and trying to catch it, just unbeatable. So, I love that. We'd take a picnic blanket, we'd go and sit on the hill, you'd watch the game, there'd be blokes just ripping the top off a tin of beer and off they'd go. I love it. I'm quite happy with how it is now, though. It's an amazing atmosphere. The gradient of the seats and everything just creates an amazing, very, very fierce atmosphere, and we win a lot of games there. So, that's really what's important to me.
Yeah, no, that's it. The winning. With with winning, obviously you're scoring tries. What have been some of your favourite tries over the years, Parramatta tries, and maybe try scorers? Is there any that stand out for yourself?
Yeah, look, I mean, I was too young for that Eric Growth try against Canterbury. I think it was in '84. It's hard to go past Radradra. You know, for
definitely.
someone of our... I mean, Brett Kenny was obviously a brilliant try scorer, and Ella and those guys, but Radradra, just his strike rate and some of the tries he scored, length of the field jobs, just beating tackle after tackle, incredible. And then Hayne, obviously, you know, for all of the challenges he's had post his footy career, I think if you look at Jared Hayne on the field, he was just a generational talent and just one of the best players we've ever had in terms of pure ability. And that 2009 run where, you know, it was like he was covered in spiders. You know, the tries against Saints in the semi.
Yep.
And then against the Dogs again, he did it, and that was one of several tries in the lead up to the semi-finals as well. You know, chip and chases against the Tigers and whatever else. All those tries just incredible.
Yeah, no, for sure. One of my favourite games is Parramatta and Brisbane in 2017, I think it was, with Semi Radradra, 4 tries, and I think all of them were length of the field tries. And then there's one against South Sydney at a cool stadium as it is now. Again, another length of the field job, but yeah, an outstanding athlete Semi was.
One that sticks with me as well was Luke Burt at ANZ Stadium. I think he scored the first try there in front of 110,000 fans. And that one still sticks with me a bit as well. I was at the ground, watched it, and yeah, just the roar. 110,000. It's a pretty unmistakable sort of sound.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a crazy feeling, that double header. I was there too, and yeah, it was a massive day. Playing the Dragons and getting away with a win. Unfortunately, Nathan Kalis, I think, got knocked out very early on, unfortunately, but managed to get the win there. And so certainly some great try scorers there. What about some of the games that we've played, obviously, whilst you've been supporting Parramatta? Is there ones that stick out for yourself, and maybe not necessarily ones that we've won, but they've given effort or something like that? Is there games that stick out in the mind that...
Yeah, the ones that tend to stick with you are the really painful ones, I think, unfortunately. Some of the games where I've been really proud, I think about the 2000 prelim against the Broncos. We lost 16-10. I think Brad Thorne scored a late try. And that Broncos team in the late 90s, early 2000s was a really, really red-hot outfit. And our team, you know, we had a good team. 98, you know, we won't talk about that. That year never happened. 99, we were up against Storm. 16-6, we probably should have won that game, and they won the grand final in the end. But by 2000, our team wasn't expected to win the comp, and we went up against the red-hot Broncos team that ended up absolutely... demolishing. Well, they beat the Roosters, I think, fairly handily the following week, and we gave them a real run for their money. And that was one for me that stuck with me as a game. I was pretty proud. Yeah,
no, for sure. Well, let's talk. I mean, all Parramatta fans talk about all the painful memories, and it's probably good to talk about it. Everyone keeps on saying you should talk about these things. So there was a late stretch there in the late 90s and early 2000s. As you said, 98, we probably don't want to go there. Probably a game that I've never watched back again, and whenever there's highlights on, I flick it over and the like. As you said, 99, close again. 2000, close again. 2001, we make the grand final against Newcastle. We have an amazing season. Point scoring record, 4, pretty good defensive record, but odds on favourites to beat the Newcastle Knights. What are your memories of the 2001 grand final?
I guess so you're right, maybe this does help. I hate talking about this game, but and I've got mates who are Knights fans who love talking about this game.
Okay, yeah.
Look, I think as I've gotten older and as I look back on that game, my views have softened on it in terms of you look at some of the cattle that the Knights had at the time, and they might have been a bit inconsistent throughout the year. They definitely still had the better premium talent to what we did. We had an amazing unit, and we really came together that year. I look at JT was past his prime, but he really pulled us together a little bit and was our best halfback since Sterlo at the time.
Yep.
Andrew Johns went on to have an amazing career and was recognised as an immortal. And they came out and they were red hot to begin with and caught us on the hop. And it can happen in football. I was at the ground again. It's a game I've never watched again, ever. Yeah, it's up there with 98 for me in terms of the most painful ones. Look, I remember... we were down by 24 points, I think, at halftime, or 24-6 or so. I forget what exactly, 24-0 maybe.
24-0, yeah.
And we came back to 30-24, and we had maybe one set of 6 to try and get back to level pegging at the end. I think that's probably the hardest thing for me, was watching that comeback, to say that was the team we'd had all year. That was what could have happened. And because of 20 or 30 minutes of absolute madness in the first half, we threw one away. The most painful thing is that most of my mates in the local area now have premierships. Even the Sharkies fans got one 7 or 8 years ago. So it's, you got to have pretty thick skin as a Parramatta fan, because, unless you're going back to 86, we don't have that recent success that we can draw on.
That's it. Well, let's fast forward to 2009. And what are your thoughts about 2009? Because we weren't expected to get there. We finished in 8th spot and played the Dragons 2 weeks in a row. And as I said, we weren't expected to be in the grand final because we had to do it the hard way. What are your thoughts about the 2009 grand final?
Yeah, for me, 01 is really painful. 09, you're up against a Melbourne team that was an incredible team at the time, and I think they were making grand final after grand final, and they were ultimately proven to be doing it illegally. But the calibre of player that they had, you had young Folau and young Inglis in his prime, and then you had Smith and all those guys as well. It's Slater. It was just an incredible side. So for me, getting to the grand final was almost a measure of success for the season. And it was similar to 01 in terms of we pulled it back to 22-16, and then the worst field goal of all time, I think, was it Inglis on the wrong foot?
Yeah.
Just Philly scored a try that, and I still remember because I was directly behind him, just watching him just barrel through about 10 defenders.
One of the best grand final tries ever.
It was like a long-range Steve Jackson 89 effort. It was just amazing. You start to, as a Parramatta fan, you can never let yourself hope too much, and you start to see it creep in. It's, converted try away, maybe we can do this. And then, that Melbourne team shut the door, and there was no premiership winner that year in the end, after they were proven to be cheats. But I think, from my perspective, that was a game where I had some pride. I didn't expect it. I was travelling through Europe when we went through that amazing run.
Yep.
And at the time, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to come 12th here or 11th for the year. I'll keep an eye on the scores, and I listen on the radio when I'm at the Leaning Tower of Pisa and whatever else. And one win after another, they started to pile up, and you just think, okay, we're gonna make it. We ended up making the semis of a game to spare because I think we got destroyed by Saints in the final round when nothing was on the line.
I think smart coaching by Daniel Anderson that day, I think.
Yeah.
Not to play your cards in that game, I think.
Yeah, it was like Warney just bowling leg breaks in 93, and then all of a sudden he turns up and, yeah.
The flipper comes out.
Exactly, yeah. No, and so, look, I mean, it was an amazing thing to be a part of. I think my mate was over in Europe after that as well, and he ended up flying back for, was it the Titans game where we beat them 27-2, we smacked them around, and then so he could be back in time for that game because we felt like we were going to beat the Gold Coast.
Okay, yeah.
And then we had Canterbury, and that's probably one of my, if you ask me as a Parramatta fan who started watching in 88, what my favourite game of all time is, that 09 prelim against the Dogs, the Sydney Grand Final, where 76,000 fans or whatever it was, 75,000, full house, half and half fans, just electric atmosphere, and we smashed them, beat them by a couple of tries, and just Daniel Mortimer playing the game of his life.
Yeah.
He went on to win a premiership later with the Roosters, but, I think that was the time when he was actually one of the form 5/8s in the comp, and he was part of the cog. But it was the Haynes show, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, Timmy Matter made his debut that year and scored a try in that game as well, under the post. It was certainly most of the players that I talked to that played in that game, that's their favourite game as well. Just the atmosphere of the ground, as you said, half and half. And it certainly was a great victory. Let's fast forward again to 2022, and we play the Panthers in the grand final. Now the Panthers, they were going for back-to-back premierships at the time. We have a pretty good record against the Panthers during regular season games. We can't quite get that victory against them in big games, but what were your thoughts going into the game of 2022, the grand final? Did you think we could beat them? And then ultimately after the game, what were your thoughts about it?
I was not confident, it's fair to say, because Penrith had been there, they'd done that, and to your point, we'd beaten them in the regular season a few times, and then we'd lost to them in the semis the year before. I think we took them to the wire and lost 8-6. And then we took them on in this grand final. I didn't watch the game live. It was a really weird story where one of my hobbies is I like to run marathons. Okay. And there's this thing called the 6-Star Marathon Challenge. And London for me was my 5th star, and it happened to be the exact same time. So the footy kicked off, and then 10 minutes later I was running. So I was listening to it on the radio whilst I'm running the marathon.
Okay, yeah.
I was wearing my Nathan Hindmarsh 300 games cap, and I was wearing a gold singlet. I was wearing Parramatta shorts, and I was wearing gold shoes.
Nice.
So I was trying to do my best from afar to support the team. Yeah. But I think pretty early on they got a pretty decent lead over us, and I started focusing a bit more on the running. 2022 was another year like 2009 where I felt like we squeezed every last bit of juice out of that squad. We have some amazing players where I think you've got Mitch, you've got Gutho Jr. at the peak of his powers, and then you've got Dillbags on the way up. I think with those guys, still compared to those Penrith guys who are a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more battle-hardened in rep footy as well as at the top level of club footy, I never felt confident that we could get it done. But I also, I'm not someone who subscribes to the theory that success is won or lost in premierships. 2022 was a bloody successful year for the Parramatta Eels.
Definitely.
And it's a year that I'm really proud of. We went to North Queensland the week before. We played a day later than the Panthers. We travelled to probably the hardest road trip in footy, maybe Melbourne, but you're playing in 27 degrees and 90% humidity.
Yep.
And we ran down the Cowboys on their home deck. Reg had the game of his life. And we had an amazing win. That one's right up there with the Bulldogs win for me as one of my favourite games of all time. Those boys really did an amazing job, and then ultimately they fell a bit short in the grand final, but pretty proud of the year. Disappointed but proud.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, both the men's team and the women's team making the grand finals, that's a massive achievement. I don't think any other club has done that before. Not that every club's got a NRLW team, but let's talk about the recent times and the current crop of Parramatta players. What do you think about who is your favourite sort of current players that we have in our side?
Gutho.
Yeah.
I think if I look at the manifestation of Nathan Hindmarsh in the back line, it's Gutho. A bloke who is arguably not the most dynamic or most talented player on the field, but a guy who just gives more for the team than anyone else, week in, week out. It's a really interesting contrast. We've had two great fullbacks in the last decade. You've got one who was the most talented guy And there were so many weeks where you'd just be so frustrated with Hayne, watching him just kind of like cruise around and let in soft tries and not really put in, he touched the ball 6 times in the game kind of thing. And then you've got the Gutho, who every single game looks like he's he's been through a war. It doesn't matter who we're playing, where we're playing. The guy just absolutely bleeds for his team, and it's hard not to love a player like that. He's a very easy guy to get behind.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just trying to think. Gutho is re-signed for another couple of years. He's the co-captain. Definitely an inspirational leader, and as you said, never gives up. Even that game this year against Penrith, the last round, he was playing with a bung knee and he was still on the field, and then he eventually went off. But hopefully he'll be right for 2024. What about the coach of the Parramatta Eels, Brad Arthur? He comes under a lot of criticism, and probably maybe sometimes rightfully so. I'm a big fan of BA, but as I said, sometimes rightfully can come under some criticism. He's been there now, I think, 10 years. I think he's going on 11 years, I think, now. He's the longest-serving Parramatta Eels first-grade coach. Do you think Brad can deliver a premiership for the Parramatta Eels as head coach? What are your thoughts on Brad Arthur?
It's a complicated question. I'm also a fan of Brad Arthur. For me, as someone who has experienced some really, really low patches as an Eels fan, 92 through until 95, 91 to 95, that sort of space.
Yep.
And then obviously we'll call it the Sandow era, or whatever, whoever you want to, the Faddo era, Carl Webb, Paul Osborne, mistake after mistake after mistake, Chris Walker, getting spoon after spoon in some of those years. For me, having a coach that gets a lot out of his players and that the players want to win for, I'm happy with a guy that can take us to a grand final. Where a couple of things go your way and you win that grand final. I know we were off the pace on the day, but Penrith have an injury in the way, ifs and buts for candy and nuts and all that stuff. But for me, the question of can he win us a premiership, I guess time will tell. Yeah. The question is, do we have the players to win a premiership? Because I think, I look at it this way, if Brad Arthur left Parramatta, there'd be half a dozen clubs who would just snap him up in a heartbeat. So that to me indicates that he's a coach that has brings a lot of benefit to a club. Okay. He's clearly brilliant at developing forwards. He's excellent at taking sort of undiscovered talents or cast-offs and turning them into a diamond. Look at Ice a couple of years ago before he went to. He basically came to us with limited value. BA got everything out of him, and then the Tigers snapped him up, and he hasn't been the same player since going to the Tigers. Look at Jermaine Hopgood this last season as a more recent example. Another really good one. There's obviously a market inefficiency right now with going and stealing players off the Penrith production line who can't find a first-grade spot, but I think Brad gets a lot out of these guys. I think Mitchell Moses is one of the 4 or 5 best halves in the comp, which is enough to win you a comp. I think our success is tied to Dylan Brown realising his potential. I think Gutho is what he is, and he gets you that every week. I think, unfortunately, Junior is probably starting to come down on the backside of his career, so he's probably past his best. Reg is playing the best footy of his career. But then I think Dylan Brown's still only 23. He's been around forever. But you look at what he can do on his day, and when he's red hot, we're a very, very tough football team to stop. So I think it'd be very interesting to see how we go this year, and I think that'll dictate what Brad's future will be with the club. I think we can be a top 4 side. I know that might not be the popular opinion with the journos, but I think if Moses and Brown are healthy all year and Gutho and that spine is intact, I still think we're missing a hooker. And we're a few years away from Matty Arthur coming through. But, yeah, look, if we can get solid solid level of play out at the hooking position between the two guys, Hands and Lussick sharing the role. And then I think if Dylan Brown can go on and be, a top 3 or 4 player in the league, then I think we could win the comp. So I don't think I blame Brad, is the short answer.
Okay.
I think he's done a really good job pulling together a squad and the squad that wants to play for him.
Yeah, no, good answer there. Great answer there. And, 2024, hopefully year of the Eels. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Now, you're a massive jersey collector, but aside from jerseys and, say, T-shirts and stuff, is there any favourite sort of piece of Eels memorabilia that you have?
Outside of those things, I've got little plastic Eels collectible, rubber Eels collectible that sits
Figurines,
on my figurine that sits on my computer at work and goes with me from country to country and sits with me everywhere. I've got a 1993 fully signed ball from the squad. Yeah, some great names on the 93 ball. Primarily, I collect jerseys, jackets, T-shirts. I've got some ties and things like that. But mostly, for me, it's the jerseys. That's the thing. That's the thing that I love. As a kid, it's all I wore. So.
All right. Well, let's get into that. As I said, the Instagram page is Reeks_jersey_bonanza_sequel. Now, how did you get into collecting jersey? I mean, I'm assuming it's probably similar to myself, supporting a team and then just getting jersey after jersey, year after year. But how did you get into that, and what made you pick it up and just keep on going and going and going?
Yeah, when I got my first jersey, my parents got it for me for maybe my 12th birthday, and I remember just wearing it around everywhere, just religiously. And to your point, a lot of the jerseys you buy are because of the fact you want to support the team.
Yep.
Not everyone understands that, but there's some weird sort of connection you feel when you wear the same jersey as the team on game day. You're not out there on the field. They have no idea you're supporting them. But ultimately, for me, it just helps me feel like I'm part of something bigger than and the Parramatta Football Club and its fandom and whatever becomes something that it's a broader thing, and it's something that I love to be part of, and I feel like that's your way of wearing the uniform, if you like. For me, in high school, I'd save up all my money so I could buy a jersey. Thankfully now I have a job, so I can I can afford to buy a jersey or two each year, and it doesn't send me destitute.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was a big deal to save up whatever it cost, $80, $90 for a jersey in the mid '90s, and the jerseys at that time, the cotton jerseys, I just love them. They're just the most comfortable kits. They were good-looking jerseys for Parramatta in the late '90s. In my opinion, I still love that era just about the most.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for me, being out somewhere, wearing a jersey, and just immediately you can strike up a connection with someone else, sees you and they're like, oh, hey, that's 98. Yeah, that's right. And then you can just start up a conversation and the connection. You've got some sort of kinship with these people.
Okay,
and that's what.
So you've mentioned that you've been overseas. Have you spotted where's the most, I guess, unique place that you've seen a Parramatta jersey overseas?
So
besides yourself?
Yeah, I would probably be one of the most unique, I think. So I moved to the US in 2016, and then I moved to Europe in 2021. So I'm in Austria right now.
Okay.
I didn't know how to ski, but I've started learning how to ski. And my favorite base layer for skiing is my 81 Parramatta jersey. So I'll come down the slopes wearing this Hardyplex piece of this garment, and just the Austrians and the Germans, they look at me like I've skied down from Mars. They've got no idea what's going on. I'm not one of these. I'm not the random Souths fan guy.
Yeah.
Although I have been known to wear my Parramatta jersey to Wrigley Field for Cubs games, Chicago Cubs games, and get around there on occasion. I think probably my proudest moment in the US was being able to convert some of my friends there to being able to support the club and getting them wearing jerseys. We'd go to a Chicago Bears games wearing Parramatta jerseys, things like that. So, you don't see them in weird places. I definitely find them in weird places as a collector. You wouldn't believe how many jerseys you find in Poland and the Ukraine and areas like that. It's insane. But, look, I don't see many Parramatta jerseys just popping up. It's usually me, to be honest.
Okay, that's fair enough. And you mentioned there the US and converting friends, and before the chat we were talking about that you're heading over to Vegas for the doubleheader in March. That's got to be fantastic to get to. How much do you think the US public will take in rugby league, and will they absorb it and really get into it, and then could this roll on and can it gain a following?
Yeah, the sport itself is brilliant TV product, and it should really suit the US. My friends who I introduce it to in the States, they immediately are hooked by it. The biggest challenge we face is how do we come out from behind rugby union, and I say we, how does rugby league come out from behind rugby union because that's how most people view, they just call everything rugby, and they only know rugby union.
Yeah, it annoys me.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at, recently they were doing the media tour and they're at that Raiders game in Vegas, and, whether or not we send our best, our brightest and best over there with Aaron Woods and co is a matter for debate. But, they're all calling it rugby. And then the clips they were pulling out weren't that crash hot. It was someone it might have been like a hindy flop on someone for his 57th tackle of the game, or it might have been Aaron Woods tripping over someone. It didn't really show rugby league in its purest form. I think with the right marketing, it could take off. It's a very saturated sporting market. So, ultimately, it's always going to be a niche sport. It's not going to displace American football, so football as they would call it over there.
Yep.
And then the other three major sports as well, in terms of hockey, basketball, and baseball, they all have their part to play. So for me, it's the benefit league has, particularly Australian, is that it's played during the football off season in the US. The time difference is really problematic.
Okay.
As someone who lived in the US for 5 years, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. kickoffs are not ideal.
No.
So it's going to be something that's going to be on delay for a lot of people. That's always a challenge they have to overcome. But if you can get it into the schools, because rugby union is played there right now, if you can get it into the schools, you get people playing this thing. It's a big market, it's a sports mad market, and it's a sport that they would love if they knew about it more.
You're catching up with your friends that are Parramatta fans. Have they still supported Parramatta and watched rugby league ever since you've moved from the US?
Yeah. I've got a couple of mates, and I'll shout out John and Dan now, who we've got a little chat group. The Minnesota Eels.
Okay.
They're both from Minnesota, but they moved around the US. And those guys, every game, they'll send me details on the game, and sometimes it doesn't sound like the way we would speak about the game.
Okay, yeah,
but
that's for sure.
I'm sure when I speak about the NFL, I don't sound the way that they do. I don't have that innate knowledge that you've had as a kid growing up with the sport. So a couple of these guys, fantastic. They follow the games. I've got a buddy, Chris, in Atlanta, who wears he wears his jersey around
Cool.
in Atlanta. He's 6'5", big fella, played football, American football at school. But he wears his sort of triple XL Parramatta jersey around town occasionally. So, I'm trying to do a little bit of missionary work on behalf of the Eels.
That's great. We'll have to get some Parramatta Eels international memberships over to them or something like that. And if the Eels are listening, then let's get them on board and really promote Parramatta over there. Even though we're not playing the doubleheader, but what are you going to wear to the double? Are you going to wear an Eels jersey or what? Because Parramatta's not playing, so...
Yeah, look, Troy, we chatted about this before we went on the air. The whole random South Sky thing, I think, is completely played out, and I think this is just another one of these ridiculous, Souths fans, who are spoiling the league with their nonsense. But no, look, I'll show up in Para jerseys anywhere. I'm debating. Typically, as a collector, as a Parramatta fan, I've got some pretty set rules. I've got this mate who is another big collector who I went to school with. We call him Fat Whitey. I'm sure you'll love being called Fat Whitey on a podcast, but he and I both kind of align on these rules where it's like, okay, if you're going to a neutral game, we wear defunct teams. So as part of my collection, I've got Rams jerseys, Crushers jerseys, Reds jerseys, et cetera, et cetera. So, even Bears jerseys, I think, is safe to wear at this point in time. Newtown Jets, those jerseys, I think, are all fairly safe to wear as a Parramatta fan.
Yep.
So I'm debating what to wear. I am either going to wear a Parramatta jersey or I'm going to wear one of those teams. You would never see me caught dead in public in a Souths jersey. Certainly not a Manly jersey. I'd rather light myself on fire than wear that. And then, Broncos just also disgusting, and the Roosters. It's really not a great lineup as a neutral, is it? Some pretty awful supporter bases and teams.
Do you think the American Rugby League jersey would be too sort of won't fit in, or
I'm debating wearing that. It's a 1993 World Sevens jersey.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I just saw it, and I was thinking, yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of red, white and blue in the crowd, I guess. Might get, a bit mixed up with the Roosters jersey, but, obviously a gold Parramatta jersey would stand out.
Let me ask you, Troy, what do you think I should wear? What's your recommendation as someone who's up to speed with league trends?
Oh, look, I'm one for that doesn't like to wear a team that's not playing's jersey, so I won't wear a Parramatta jersey to a neutral game. So I'd probably go with your neutral thought, I think, of wearing a jersey. But I guess it's a little bit different, isn't it? Because it's a rugby league celebration. It's the first time it's ever happened. It's sort of like it's a mini Magic round. So if that was the case, then it probably an exception for me. I probably wouldn't bother me wearing a gold Eels jersey, something like that.
I am thinking that it's a good chance to get people to wear it as an advertising for the club.
Definitely.
Look, Magic Round, I'm actually flying over this year to catch up with mates. I'm flying into Australia for 4 days for it. And that for me is like, you talk about the catwalks of Milan and Paris, etc. Magic Round is the fashion show for jersey collectors. It's the chance to dust off your best Guernseys for 3 straight days. And I might treat Vegas the same. Just, wear probably one of my rarest Parramatta jerseys and get around in that.
Yeah, no, it's a great event there. What is your rarest Parramatta jersey that you've got?
Probably my favourite, my rarest is probably the 1997 World Sevens jersey. Those ones are pretty rare these days. I know you've got the M&M jersey, which I think you've got me one up there. But the 1997 World Sevens and the 2003 World Sevens, for retail jerseys are probably close to being as rare as you can get for Parramatta fans. Before that, you start getting into the 1980s and 70s game worns as being really the ones that people try to go after. But that's really about having the right connections at that point in time.
Yeah, definitely. How many jerseys have you got in your collection?
I hope my wife doesn't listen to this, but it's probably over 1,000.
Okay.
A lot of American sports, a lot of EPL as well.
Yeah.
My grandfather grew up in Highbury, so I've been a huge Arsenal supporter since I was 5 or 6 years old. So I've probably got 50 or 60 Arsenal jerseys. They're probably second only to my Parramatta collection in terms of passion and also in terms of jersey count.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd have over 1,000, of which 300 or 400 would probably be league, or yeah.
Oh no, mate! It's an amazing collection. I'm just looking at it here on the Instagram page and just scrolling through it, and some great memories there. Atlanta Hawks, Dominique Wilkins.
Yeah. I've got a buddy, as I said.
Remember him
Atlanta.
back in the day?
Oh, the human highlight reel.
Slam dunk champion. But there's certainly some great jerseys here, and as I said, as you said, in different sports as well. Shaquille O'Neal, ones that stand out. Scottie Pippen, he's coming back to Australia next year for a tour. The old one-day cricket shirt.
I'm a huge cricket fanatic as well, Troy. So I'm looking forward to going to the Test in January with a few mates.
Okay,
it's going to be fantastic. But I've got some of my favourite jerseys are actually some of my like an Australia A 1994-95 kit.
Okay,
remember?
yeah. Is that the stripy one?
It was the predominantly green one where the top team wore the predominantly yellow one.
Yeah.
Then you've got the lightning bolts. You've got the barcode, which is the 96. The cricket jerseys are great to collect as well.
Oh yeah, here they are. Yeah. Some World Cup winning cricket shirts there, jerseys. I guess you could. Do they call them jerseys in cricket?
I still call it a jersey. Yeah.
Mate, your collection here is amazing.
I always tell my wife.
Various different sports, and amazing.
I tell my wife it's an investment in our future. This is our superannuation fund. I'm not sure how much she believes me, but it's a myth I like to perpetuate in our house.
Ah, look, you never know. You never know what's going to happen, but you hope it's not. But it's certainly a great collection there. And listeners, as I said, check out the Instagram page. There's some great photos on there of different jerseys, and it just brings up so many good memories of growing up watching rugby league. Video Easy, Canberra Raiders, Smiths Crisp, South Sydney, BHP Steel, Illawarra Steelers. At the moment on Fox League, they're playing a lot of older games from the 90s, and some of these jerseys are being worn, and it just brings back so many great memories.
The footy back then, we all look back with nostalgia at that era. The footy was a different game. Those guys were nowhere near as fast, powerful, big, dynamic as the players of today. But I just have so many fond memories of the sport, even with the 5 metre rule in play, and, the game just didn't flow. And, you look at the top point scorers in 1989, I think it was like Ricky Walford with 146 points or something like that. And you look at it today and it's 250 points. There's so many more points. It's faster flowing. But I just loved it.
Is that your favourite era of rugby league, the 90s?
Yeah, well,
growing up with the game?
That was kind of my formative era, yeah. So I would say so. The grounds weren't as good. So you just have these absolute mud battles.
Yeah.
You had stupid things like Rowdy Shearer kicking duels. In what world is this, a great tactical manoeuvre? But just these are the things that stick with you your whole life. And you just look back on it all and just, it's just a fantastic sport, and it's evolved. It's still a fantastic sport. I just love it.
Yeah, as I said, watching those old Fox games, you come up with the muddy fields, the 20, 30, 40 numbers on the back, the collars on the shirts, the kicking off sand. It certainly was a great time for watching rugby league. And did you ever play it as a kid?
I played rugby. I played a couple of games of league only, filling in for a mate's team. So, no, I didn't. I played rugby. I played a decent level of touch football and a bit of Oz tag. But no, I didn't play league. I didn't go to a league school. Yeah.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, no, it certainly is a great collection, and one that everyone should check out. That's for sure. How do you go, like, watching games from overseas? It must be difficult.
Yeah, Europe's much better. The US was really difficult.
Okay.
I never missed a Parramatta game whilst I was there, unless I was flying or something. And it's the same as true in Europe. I never miss a game. I always manage to be where I need to be to watch the footy. I'll be honest with you, Thursday night footy's hard because I have a meeting scheduled every Thursday morning that I can't really avoid. So I always put the iPad hidden behind my monitor so I can pretend to be paying attention to the meeting I'm in. But ultimately, I'm keeping half an eye on Parramatta if they're playing Thursday nights. Friday night footy, kickoffs 10 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock lunchtime. So, again, you've got to try and carve out a little bit of time in the diary. But if you're Saturday and Sunday, it almost takes us back to when we were kids and you have lunchtime footy or early afternoon footy. Yeah. It's amazing cracking a beer at 11:30 and then watching the game at 12, and then by 2 o'clock the footy's over and you go and do something else. It's really actually great. And this year, for the last couple of years, I've got an 8-year-old son, and he's starting to get into it. Okay. And that completely changes your fandom again, because all of a sudden you've got someone else who just asked me so many questions, and okay, what's wrong with Junior today? Why isn't he playing as well? And and just being able to have that conversation with someone and just watch them start to grow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a really awesome feeling. Yeah, no, definitely, that's pretty cool. And being on the other side of the world as well, as you said, it's got someone to talk to and someone that's interested in the game. And for me, that's part of what I love about jersey collecting. You meet some really interesting characters and you talk to some really interesting people around. But it's a way, again, to have a connection to the game and to your home country, and to be able to speak to people about things that we're mutually interested in. And the jersey community, it's a little weird, it's a little niche. It's not for everybody. A lot of people wouldn't understand it, but the people who are in there, there's some good people, and it's a pretty close-knit community, and people usually look out for each other. Do you think you'll ever stop, or just keep on growing and growing and growing, and then maybe pass it down to the son? That's the idea. Yeah, I've got 3 kids. The girls I'm not sure about. They probably won't be as interested, but you never know. We live in hope. You're going to try and get them into NRLW maybe? Or? Yeah, I mean, I try to watch all the games with them, and they prefer to watch other things. Okay. It's fair to say. Yeah. But maybe as they get older, it might happen. Look, I never have a desire to sell my jerseys. Occasionally I'll trade ones where I've got a couple of them for something that I don't have one of. Yep, smart. But there is it depends on space and various other considerations, but I think I would love it if my kids had the same level of interest as I did. I would prefer not to sell any of them, because for me, it forms a part of who you are, and it would actually probably cause me some pain to sell some of these jerseys. I just wouldn't be, let's just say you get a couple of $100 for something, a 2015 jersey or something like that. It's a couple of $100 comes and goes pretty quickly, particularly in Australia. And, but those jerseys can be hard to get back. And particularly once you've worn them, you remember them. I've got my 1981 jersey has been worn. It's falling apart on top of me. But the amount of games I've worn that in, you just can't replace those memories. No, that's it. Yeah, there's a sentimental aspect to it. Yeah, no, definitely. The ones that you wear and wear, as you said, memories just stick in the brain, and you remember, I wore that at that day and that game we won. And I remember wearing the 81. At the 0-1 prelim against the Broncos with my mate Gonzo, who's another big Parramatta fan. And, these are the games that you remember the jersey you're wearing on the day as well as the game, which is strange. I'm not sure everyone's like that, but there's things for me that stick. And I pick my jerseys selectively. I have lucky jerseys and not lucky jerseys. I definitely never wear the 2013 away jersey because I'm not sure how lucky that is. And there was about 3 years in a row where we never won a game in the yellow jerseys. We weren't winning. And it's funny now that people are crying out for the yellow jerseys, aren't they? The gold ones. Yeah, well, the white one seems to be controversial. I don't mind the white. I mean, and if there's a practical aspect to it and it's good in the heat, I get it. But the yellow is the iconic, the gold, Although I don't like the Macron jerseys. I would love to see us partner with someone that actually makes a decent jersey for the fans, because I think we'll sell the jerseys anyway, but I think you'll sell more if you have one that looks and feels good.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Well, I don't think my daughter's going to carry on this collection, because she has absolutely no interest in rugby league, so I've got no idea what's going to happen to this stuff.
Yeah, hopefully you've got a few more years left in you, Troy.
I hope so, definitely. But I always said I'll donate it back to the club or something like that, and who knows. But she has no interest in Parramatta Eels at all. But she is a member of the club because I've signed her up.
Lucky her.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just trying to think of what else we haven't covered. We'll wrap things up with the set of 6 questions, more like the personality questions outside of rugby league. Is there a favourite sport outside of rugby league at all? I mean, you mentioned NFL and NBA and.
My father-in-law will say there's not a sport that I won't watch. When I first started dating my wife, I'd go over to his house and try and hijack the TV to watch Jack High Bowls and things like that. But look, I think if rugby league's definitely my major passion as a supporter. Beyond that, I'd say probably Arsenal in the Premier League and the Boston Celtics in the NBA. But then, I grew up as a rugby guy in Eastwood, so Eastwood Rugby. I'm not. The professional sides in rugby union, I don't care about the Waratahs and I don't care about the Wallabies as much as I used to, but I still follow Shoot Shield pretty closely. I could go on with this, by the way. There's every sport, every team. Okay. Big Boston Celtics fan in the NBA, Red Sox fan in the MLB, Bruins fan in the hockey. It could just go on and on. I follow the Swans. I do.
Okay. Yeah.
The AFL for me was always a bit of a curiosity, but I got into it when Paul Kelly and Plugger Lockett and those guys in the mid-90s actually took them from being an absolute basket case to being they made the grand final in 96. So I still keep an eye on the Swans.
Okay.
I do feel a bit dirty, to be honest, supporting the Swans now that there's a Western Sydney side, but you kind of got to pick and stick, I think. I was a Wanderers member for a long time, so was at Parramatta Stadium whilst I was living in the country. Was at Parramatta Stadium year round as a season ticket holder of both sides. There's not a sport I can't. I find a passion in any sport.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. That's for sure. Is there someone that you'd love to meet and have a chat with? Either in the jersey collecting space or a celebrity, sporting star, whatever. Is there someone that you'd love to just sit down and have a chat like we are now?
Outside of Parramatta?
Well, anybody.
Look, I think within Parramatta it would probably be Sterlo. I think he's a great speaker of the game. He's a very astute sort of pundit when it comes to the game. I'd be really keen to pick his brain about Parramatta. Outside of that, I would probably say Larry Bird from the Boston Celtics. I have no geographical affinity to the Celtics, but as a kid in the 80s, as a basketball fan, you're either a Magic Johnson Lakers or Larry Bird Celtics, and I definitely looked more like Larry Bird, not athletic, kind of white guy. So for me, Larry Bird was my favourite player. So I'd love to speak to him because he gives a brilliant interview.
Yeah, I think Jamie Soward's a big Boston Celtics fan and Larry Bird fan himself. Now, you've lived and worked overseas, but what's your favourite holiday destination?
Ooh, favourite holiday destination. Look, I think there's a bit of recency bias here. We just went away for my wife's 40th to Crete, the Greek island. We spent a week there. It was just a brilliant holiday. On honestly, I love. My parents have a holiday place up at Port Stephens, so I love
nice
getting up
place in the
to.
world, yeah.
Yeah, I love getting up to that area. It's beautiful up there. So, yeah, look, in Australia, there's so many different places you could say. Even as a teenager, going up and getting on the piss on the Central Coast with my mates at Club Troppo or some other seedy joint. I have fond memories of all of that stuff, or lack of memories, as it were.
Yeah, definitely. That's a blast from the past. Club Troppo. What's your specialty dish in the kitchen or on the barbecue?
I'll be honest, pretty limited culinary sort of person. My specialty dish would be I love cooking up a barbie. For me, that's what I grew up with at home. You get a million snags on there.
Yep.
You drain your beer quickly. You leave about 15% of it. You pour it over the snags, the onions, all that stuff. And you marinate the snags.
I must try that one, actually.
Oh, when you get your dregs, that's where the dregs all go on the beer, on the snags. That's the... Yeah, I think inside the kitchen, my kids always joke that I'm the best in the house at making cereal and toast and toasted sandwiches. And beyond that, I certainly am not the expert in our house.
Don't worry, I'm not either. The wife does all the cooking. I'm about the same, bacon and eggs and sausages. That's probably about it for me. What's your favourite sporting movie or documentary?
Fever Pitch. It's but the 1997 version with Colin Firth. It's an Arsenal movie. It's worth checking out. Arsenal have had more success than Parramatta, but this was documenting the 1989 season where they won the league for the first time in 18 years. So there was some similarities there.
Yeah, okay, yeah, definitely.
That one for me is my favourite. But, I mean, all sporting movies, you can get me with any of them. Even something like Eddie the Eagle where he's skiing down the slopes at the end and jumping, I can get into any of them. If there's sport involved, pretty much. I love Moneyball. I think objectively that's a brilliantly made film as well as just a sporting movie.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. It was just I've got an English mate who lives here now, and we've actually made a bet that we haven't put any money on it yet, and we should have been keeping a rolling tally because we bet, I think it was $5 each year, that he's a Tottenham Hotspurs fan. So they haven't won the FA Cup in a long time, and Parramatta obviously haven't won the competition, the premiership, in a long time. So we had this, we still got it, but we don't know the rolling total. That if I win, if Parramatta win the premiership, then I win, and if Tottenham win the FA Cup, he wins. So the only hard thing about that is he's got a little bit of an advantage because the FA Cup's in May or June, the final, and the premiership for the rugby league's in October. So if Tottenham win the FA Cup in June or May, then Parramatta have to win the comp in October. So neither of us has done it yet, and as I said, we should have kept a rolling total because I reckon it could be well over $200 by now. So,
but Troy, with the 1997 and 2003 World Sevens titles, you've got him covered there. I think those are obviously pride of place in the trophy cabinet.
Yeah, no, they are, but I didn't know him back then. So,
okay. And 2016 got stripped, didn't it?
Yeah, which was a bit strange because I don't think it was an NRL run competition. So I don't know how that works. And the last one, who's your favourite band or solo artist to listen to?
Favourite band? Oh, okay. So, again, probably, I grew up Guns N' Roses, Metallica. That's kind of my kind of music. Solo artists, I was talking to a mate this morning about Taylor Swift. I couldn't believe that this is a thing now. But we were talking about how
massive, isn't it?
Yeah, musical acts don't seem to be sort of as... They don't sort of dominate the public discourse like they used to when they were megastars. Now they seem to be just part of a bigger machine, and they're, it's all about TikTok and Instagram Reels and influencers and that stuff. As a solo act, I don't know. Most of my music I listen to are bands, like Journey, Van Halen,
all the good stuff.
Well, it's arguable compared for some people, but
it is. What's your favourite Guns N' Roses or Metallica song?
Oh, I mean, the Black Album for me, for Metallica, was, I know it's not necessarily the most critically acclaimed, but again, that was the one that introduced me to the band. So, and there's just hit after hit there. So, Anna Sandman and stuff, just these are unbeatable sort of tracks. But they've got a million great songs. And then Gunners, I mean, it's the same deal. Sweet Child of Mine, November Rain, all those sort of songs. But you can crank out a heap of them, and they're all bangers. Yeah. They can get you going at any given time.
Definitely. And a Sandman, a good pump-up song to run out to, I think, for the side. But I did notice one thing that you have that I don't, and that's the Eels tattoo there that you got on the arm there.
Yeah.
Is there a story behind that? Did you always want one?
No, I didn't always want one. So I was traveling for work last year, and I was in the States, and so on the plane I managed to get some in-flight Wi-Fi to listen to the radio, to listen to the Beat the Raiders 40-4 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It was something like that score. And then I was still in the States when we beat the Cows, and the game kicked off at 5 a.m. I was watching it. I immediately called, one of my best mates we were season ticket holders for a year. We've known each other for 40 years, and we're both sort of bouncing around. I was in the hotel room. He was on the piss somewhere. It was great. And I was just so full of hope and everything that day. I went out and got a tattoo, which I look back on it, and I guess you can't live your life with regrets. But, it wasn't something I set out to do. I certainly don't care about having it, and I love that. I've got the 1980s Eels logo, that cartoony one, not the traditional iconic circle, but the one with the eel, like the cartoon eel bursting out of the background.
Yeah.
And for me, that was one that I had it on T-shirts and everything growing up as a kid. So it's, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's
no
all right.
regrets.
I've always said that potentially, if Parramatta, when they win the grand final, I'll get a premiership tattoo, but Eels tattoo. But I don't have the Eels tattoo at the moment. But when they win the comp, maybe watch his space.
Yeah, this year, next year.
2024, maybe watch his space and
undefeated premiers.
Yeah, that's it. Look, I just got one quick one that I just thought of. You mentioned there that you listened to the game on a plane. What other sort of weirdish spaces and times have you listened or watched a Parramatta Eels game?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm a big runner. So most Saturday, Sunday mornings, I'll throw in my AirPods and I'll listen to Grandstand Rugby League as I go for a run. So I'll run for 2 or 3 hours and just listen to the footy. And I play Supercoach each year as well, and have for 15 years.
Yeah.
The last year
Do you stack your team with Parramatta players?
No, I play in the cash comps and stuff.
Okay.
So last year I came about 600th overall out of 130,000. So we take it pretty serious. There's a bit of cash on the line.
Yeah.
So I'm always keen to hear my players playing, and you listen for the offloads and the try assists. I listen. On the plane is a good one. Every now and then, if you're flying Emirates, you can usually get the footy.
Okay.
So I watched Parramatta beat the Titans last year around Easter time, coming home on an Emirates flight. As I mentioned, I'm starting to learn how to ski, so I'll throw the AirPods in as I'm coming down the slopes, listening to.
Geez, that could be a bit risky, I think.
Yeah, it's risky anyway, so this doesn't hurt it. But yeah, so doing things like that. Going when. If in the States, there's occasions where I'd be at an NBA game and I'd be listening to the radio whilst watching the Chicago Bulls play, because I was based in Chicago. Like I said to you, I'll find a way to listen to the footy almost anywhere.
That's great. That's commitment. That's awesome.
Actually, this year I was on Santorini for my as we went to Greece for my wife's birthday. Walking around Santorini, and it was the second or third last game of the year. We were playing the Roosters, and we ended up losing, but I was listening to the radio walking around there while the tour guide was talking about the various buildings, and I was just not listening.
Historic things and...
Yeah, who cares? I'm more worried to see if we can salvage this miserable season we had.
How does it affect your running when we're having a really bad game or something like that? Does it affect that?
No.
Or does it make you run faster because you're angry and mad? And
The hard thing, so when you run long distance, you have to kind of moderate your heart rate and things like that. So there's a lot of practice
well,
involved.
that's no good listening to Parramatta play sometimes.
So when we concede a try, it's usually okay. When we score a try, I find all of a sudden I'm just bursting along, running faster, and just because you just get this burst of adrenaline. Again, I feel like I'm on the field, but that's the hardest part is when we're scoring tries or we have a great moment, and all of a sudden you find you're running faster than you should be, and your heart rate's going too high, and you're probably going to die in the arse pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, Ed. I can imagine. Well, look, thank you very much for coming out to the Para Cave today and having the chat with me today. It was really interesting. And as I said before, listeners, check out the Instagram page, Ricks_Jersey_Bonanza_sequel. Great pictures of jerseys there, mostly all Parramatta ones, but there is New South Wales origin, there's old retro jerseys, there's Australian Kangaroos, as you said, NBA, rugby union, cricket, AFL, so there's some great pictures on there, and no doubt the listeners will get some great memories out there for sure looking at all those pictures. And maybe we might catch up at Magic Round as well. I'm going to head up there as well. So we'll try and catch up there. And also, thank you very much for supporting the podcast as well by getting you a hat and shirt. I really appreciate that. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast today and coming out to the Para Cave.
Thanks for having me, Troy. I mean, I love the podcast. Again, living overseas and listening to a Parramatta fanatic sort of go down a path of embracing their passion and getting great guests. I love every minute. So it's really nice to meet you and really great to be on the pod.
How you going, mate? Are you a Para Cave podcast listener?
I am, bro. It's a great podcast. Everyone tune in.
Go Para. Well, thank you and welcome back, and I hope you really enjoyed the chat with Chris Ricketts. And as I said, his Instagram handle is Ricks_Jersey_Bonanza_sequel. Bonanza_sequel. So Ricks_Jersey_Bonanza_sequel. So give him a follow. And just check out the jerseys that he has in his collection, and obviously have a chat, message him as well, and talk about those jerseys as well. Comment on the jerseys. Some of them might be your favourites. That's indeed. But look, it was a great story. As I said, I'm hoping to catch up with him at Magic Round, and also a little bit before that as well, as he is going to the Las Vegas game as well. So thank you, Chris, for coming out to the Para Cave. I hope you enjoyed that visit and checking you out, and also supporting the Para Cave podcast by purchasing a shirt and a hat as well. I really appreciate that one. It means a lot that you can support the podcast like that, and support it all over the world as well. So yeah, I really appreciate that, Chris, and I will catch up with you for sure. Thank you very much for your time and coming on the Para Cave podcast, which you can listen to on the podcast provider that you're listening to currently, but it is also available on Spotify, on Apple, on YouTube now as well, in an audio form as well. So please tell all your family and friends, share it, subscribe, give it a like, give it a follow. It really helps the podcast grow. I really appreciate that. So please do that one. It's all on social media as well. It's on Instagram and Facebook, as well as X as well. The old Twitter. I still call it Twitter, but it's apparently X now. But just search for the Para Cave podcast. Give that a follow as well. There'll be some interesting content coming on there in terms of little short rugby league clips from the podcast. And look, this season 2024, it is hoping to be a big year for the podcast. I hope to be doing about 5 to 6 maybe podcasts a week on the greatest game of all, rugby league. Obviously, I have my chats with the Duckman on Pulse FM 89.9 FM, so there'll be the replayed chats of that throughout the year on a Monday and a Saturday as well. There'll be Teamless Tuesday tipping podcast coming out as well. May even try and mix it up a bit and do some videos as well and post them on YouTube as well of my tips each week, whether you follow them or not. Who knows? I wasn't that successful last year, but the year before I wasn't too bad. But last year I didn't do the best. But you can follow them, or you can tell me that your tips are better. But yeah, so that'll be coming out on a Tuesday. Obviously, the interview-based podcast on a Thursday, and I'm also going to try and get the game day podcast happening again as well, where I chat to a celebrity fan of a rugby league team and whoever is playing the Parramatta Eels as well. I may even do a review of the Parramatta Eels games as well each week. Who knows? Well, if I'm enjoying it that much, I might as well chuck that one in as well. So stay tuned for that one. So a lot of content coming out as soon as the rugby league season starts to kick off. There'll be obviously filtering through a few more podcasts in February with the trial games happening. Now I will have hopefully a special guest for the game day preview of the Indigenous All-Stars game. I am trying to get a one member of both sides of the equation, so an Indigenous great and also a Maori great as well. So that is in the works. I think I may have Andrew Walker as the Indigenous player, so we're going to chat to him about his favourite Indigenous players growing up, the favourite Indigenous players he played with, and his thoughts on the Indigenous All-Stars concept and also the game that is going to be played in a couple of weeks' time. So stay tuned for that one. That will be great as well. So, look, I really hope you enjoyed this first interview-based podcast episode. Once again, as I said, brought to you by the great sponsors of the podcast, supporting them once again in 2024, the Parramatta Podcast, brought to you by Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and Teamwear, I should say, and also the Parramatta Times. So check those ones out on socials as well, and you'll see them on my socials as well. So thank you very much, guys, for supporting the podcast. It means a lot. Anyway, that's enough for me this week, and please share this episode with your family and friends, and stay tuned on the socials as well. You never know who's going to be coming up. I've already recorded a couple of episodes already for the interview-based podcasts, which I know that you'll really, really enjoy. One is a podcast chat with a Parramatta Eels legend who probably doesn't do a lot of interviews, so I was very privileged and honoured to be able to chat to him. So that one will be coming out soon, so stay tuned for that one. And nevertheless, have a great week as best you can. I'll be back next week with another interview-based podcast, but stay tuned to the social media channels. Thank you very much for listening. Please support, please follow, please like. Have a great week. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Parramatta Podcast. See you next time.